Greetings sailors and welcome to day 3 of Patreon Supporter Week, and today it's the turn of World of Warships and Yachty70 here in his tier 10 Japanese destroyer, the Shimakaze, as if there was another tier 10 Japanese destroyer to choose from. This is, I think, the first time I've had a tier 10 ship game on the channel. In fact, I don't think I've had anything over tier 8 previously, although I do now have my first tier 9. So you can expect to see an Izumo game just as soon as I have an Izumo game worth showing. I am still actually grinding out the modules for that and credits to buy them because, hey, it's a tier 9 ship, it's pretty expensive. But the Yamato should be worth it in the end. I mean, it is the raid boss of this game. So, Yachty initially tries to go forward for B. In fact, he's activated his boost, as you can see, but he runs afoul of the enemy carrier's plane spotting him. So he immediately puts out some smoke just to be on the safe side. And as you can see there, whatever's capping in B, whichever destroyer, also smokes, just also to be on the safe side, even though they must surely know they hadn't been spotted. But of the enemy destroyers, well, we don't know which one it is. The enemy team does have a couple of American destroyers. Well, effectively at least 2, because they have a Lo Yang, which is basically a Benson, and the tier 9, whichever one that is. But they've also got Fubuki, I want to say. Is it the Fubuki? I can't remember. Whatever the tier 8 is. For some reason, all the Japanese destroyer names just get jumbled up in my head, and I can never remember which ones are which. But anyway. So, the Kagero has showed up to B as well. They've got a bit of support behind them, although the main group of ships seems to be heading more towards A, including his division mate, Totoland. And I've actually played with him and Totoland, and he's a pretty decent battleship captain. But this is definitely Yachty's game. This is all about what Yachty's up to. I mean, obviously it's his point of view, but sometimes people send me in replays and say, you know, it's not about me, it's about this other player over here. And sometimes those are very interesting as well. But this is not one of those games. So of that first wave of torpedoes he put out, one actually does strike home. I'm pretty sure this is the 20-kilometer torpedoes he's using. Now, on the tier 9, the Kagero and this, you get the option of 15-kilometer or 20-kilometer torps, and on the Kagero it's actually more of an interesting choice because the 20-kilometer torps are, I think, slower than the 15-kilometer ones, whereas on the Shimakaze it's more a choice between damage. They're both 67 knots, but the 15-kilometer torps do more damage. So it's, I don't know, it's one of these things where it's like, is 15 good enough? Because 15 is still pretty good. Or do you want that really long range spread where you just fire off all of the torpedoes and then a minute and a half later you get a message that you've hit somebody? So all of a sudden, it's gone slightly pear-shaped. Yes, they've been spotted by the Fubuki. And this is actually one of the nice things about warships and the balance of destroyers in particular, is that even if you're lower tier, and oh, there's the Fletcher. There we go, that's the one I couldn't remember the name of, the Fletcher. It's not necessarily disadvantageous, because if you are lower tier, that generally means you're going to have a better concealment value. So even though a higher tier destroyer than you might have better torpedoes, better guns, better rate of fire, better turret turn, you can probably still spot them first most of the time. So thanks to his Kagero teammate popping the smoke, Yachty's actually able to withdraw, and he actually thanks the guy. So that was a nice bit of team play from that Kagero, because Yachty's own smoke wasn't available at that exact instant, although it wasn't far from coming back. But if he'd been out in the open and spotted too much longer, he might have died. Now, I'm pretty sure he's got the captain skill that lets you keep moving even though you've got engine damage, because as you can see, there's flames coming out his funnels, and his damage indicator shows us that the engine's damaged, but he's still moving. And of course, it's going to be the captain skill plus the, whatchamacallit, the speed boost having the effect. So he's not quite as fast as if he's not had his engine damaged, but he's still moving at a reasonable speed. This is still like cruiser speeds. So he opened fire, got spotted inevitably, popped his own smoke. He doesn't really want to dance with a Fletcher that much. Although I will say, the Japanese destroyers, a lot of the time, their guns just get overlooked completely. And a lot of people assume that because they're slightly bigger guns, the Soviet destroyers have got the best overall guns. That's not actually true. They have the best AP shells. If you get Citadels with the AP with Soviet destroyers, that's worth more, considerably more than the Americans. But the Japanese destroyers have the best HE shells, both in terms of the actual damage and in terms of the fire chance. So maybe we'll get to see some shell action later. Maybe we'll get to see Yachty using his guns. Well, he's already used his guns a couple of times, but he's not really done a lot of damage with them so far. Anyway, he puts out another spread of torpedoes, and maybe he should have warned that Baltimore, who does turn to avoid them, doesn't take any damage, but by turning, he's exposed his side, so that might have been a costly turn for that Baltimore. I don't know. But at least he wasn't doing what I've seen other people do, which is sailing right up behind somebody when they know their torpedoes are going to intersect with their path, and just drop them anyway. And there are, even at the higher tiers, unfortunately, destroyer drivers that will do that. But yeah, that was some slightly iffy play from Yachty there, maybe. A bit of warning to that Baltimore might have been nice, at the very least. So there's that wave heading off into the distance. Will it hit anything? Oh, yes, it does. And he gets a kill. And that was actually one of the enemy destroyers. So that's quite useful, actually. And sometimes these spreads of torpedoes that you put out, if you're trying to get torpedoes into a specific target and somebody knows you're out there, and another hit, there we go, very nice, they can take action to avoid it. But if you put out torpedoes and the enemy just has no idea that there are torpedoes incoming, that there is even a destroyer within torpedo range, which for this thing can be very long range indeed, you can get some quite nice surprise damage that way just by literally firing and forgetting. Hell, if I was going to say a really awful pun, you could almost call it a fishing expedition. There you go. There you go. Anyway, it kind of works, right? You know, fish, torpedoes. You see where I'm going with that. It is awful, though. It is. So, the focus of this battle seems to be really all around the B point. There's a whole bunch of his allies to his west. So there's a whole bunch of enemies to the east. And this middle ground, this middle, well, sea, I should say, really, is the focus of all the attention. But they have the cap point, so they are at an advantage right now. And neither team particularly is leading the way in terms of kills, so that bonus from holding on to one more cap point than the enemy team, if they can hold on to this area, that's going to stack up. That's going to be really useful. So once again, detected from the air, and trying another speculative drop on probably the Montana. We know that there's a whole bunch of enemy ships went down that way, so it might not even have been specifically the Montana he was trying to go for. He might just have been firing in the hopes of catching something. Now I couldn't figure out, I mean, he's still spotted from the air. I couldn't figure out if that enemy carrier was deliberately keeping him lit up with those fighters, or if it was just chance. And that's one of the things, one of the biggest threats to a destroyer, especially a Japanese destroyer, if you're trying to stay stealthy, is having planes come and find you and just sit above you. And even though destroyer AA at higher tiers is, it's better, especially I think the American destroyers get some reasonable AA, you don't really want to be lit up for any length of time, because that's a very good way to die. So at the moment, he's heading north, it looks like. Maybe waiting for his torpedoes to come back. I mean, he's already put off a salvo to the south. In fact, I think 2 salvos to the south. We'll see if anything comes of that. Maybe he's thinking of going for the Megami, who's still full health. If he can help out this Tirpitz, I mean, he's taking a fearful battering. But, oh, there we go, that Ibuki's down. It's maybe going to be a little while before we can get these torpedoes up, and long enough that he won't have a good firing solution, because there is an island that's very likely going to be in the way. It's also possible he was thinking about going to poke around for the enemy carrier, because as we can see from the traces, the enemy carrier was last seen up here, but so was a Fubuki, that the same Fubuki that spotted him earlier, and of course there's that Megami as well. So that could be nasty. And in fact, there's the Fubuki engaging with the gearing right there. So instead, Yachty's turning his attention back south again. And maybe he can get some torps into that Yamato. That would be awfully nice. That's a very big, juicy target. And that's the thing about tier 10s in this game, especially tier 10 battleships, and to a lesser extent the cruisers. Because of the way the game works fundamentally, the tiering matters that bit less than World of Tanks. Now, to give an example from World of Tanks, let's say you're in an IS-7 facing a bunch of tier 8 heavies. If you can get into a position, hull down, whatever, and there's no artillery and nobody can get around you, then you're basically completely invulnerable. That is rarely to basically never true in World of Warships. Even a Yamato facing a bunch of tier 8s, they can be worn down, they can be damaged, they can be penetrated, and even if it's a bunch of, well, destroyers are very, very dangerous. You know, a tier 8 destroyer to a tier 10 battleship can still do a lot of damage, but even things like cruisers, fire does not care what set it. You know, a battleship's shell setting a fire versus a destroyer shell setting a fire doesn't matter. The fire does the same amount of damage either way. So fire is the great leveler in this game. HE shells, just, you know, whatever they hit, they've all got a chance to set it on fire. And once it's on fire, it's going to burn for the same amount of damage regardless. Or, well, you know, the same per tick of damage. You see what I mean? So he's playing with the distance here a bit. I don't know quite what his concealment range is, but it's got to be pretty decent. He's obviously going to be using the concealment system, and he'll have the camo, and maybe he even has the captain's skill. But either way, it's close enough that he can be close to this Yamato, comparatively speaking. This is not going to be a big, wide, 20-kilometer, you know, torpedo spread just on the off chance of actually hitting something. This is still a bit of a spread. He's accounting for the fact the guy might turn, but he is looking to do some serious damage. And look at this Yamato. He's under all kinds of fire right now. In terms of numbers, both teams are still equal, but the points advantage has really started to rack up with the Yachty's team. Now, remember when I said we might see the HE shells in action? And oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. There's the torpedo hits. Yeah, fire is the great leveler. I mean, the guy has stopped the flooding. And this is precisely why Yachty's popped a smoke and is now going to sit here and try and set the guy on fire. Because he knows for a fact this guy will have used his damage control party to stop the flooding. So if he can get a fire going, then that's more damage for him. That's all gravy at that point. And there we go. That's a fire set. So if he gets lucky, maybe he can even burn this guy out and get the kill. And oh, a couple more seconds. There we go. He does get the kill. Very nice. Now, unfortunately, and I say this sort of, I mean, they're not that far apart in numbers, but unfortunately, they're so far ahead in points that although he clearly wants to go for this Montana, I mean, he really clearly does. He sets up for a firing solution, and again, he's still relatively close, but he just doesn't have time. He just does not have time, unfortunately, at all. So it's not really unfortunate for the enemy team, because some of them get to live, but it's unfortunate for Yachty, because I'm sure he would have liked to do a lot more damage. So I think he just didn't even notice. He's putting torpedoes in the water anyway, and again, spreading them out a bit. So he's got some good coverage there, because it only takes a couple of torpedo hits to do a lot of damage with these tier 10 destroyer torpedoes. But no, there's just not time. Even though they are relatively fast, they're never going to get there. They're never going to get there. So there we go. We're just about to get to 1,000 points and a win. So both Yachty and Totoland survived that. The question is, what does the team list look like? Well, as you can see, this was a very good XP and credits result. 6 torpedo hits, bunch of hits with his guns, 32 hits. Let's see, 3 fires, 5 flooding, so this might be rather nice. Top of the team, over 2,000 base XP in his tier 10 destroyer. So he's not getting any XP bonus for shooting at higher tier vehicles, so he had to have been doing pretty well. And as we can see, well, his guns didn't do much. Fire damage wasn't that much, but torpedo damage was quite substantial. That was, what, nearly 90,000 damage? So yeah, that's not too shabby at all. That was actually a pretty good result. So I'm going to take a wild stab and say this was probably Yachty's first tier 10 that he went for, because, I mean, we've seen him in games on this channel previously, and he is most often in destroyers. I mean, we've, I think, seen him in a couple of cruiser games. Not sure if I've seen him in any battleship games, or not of ones that he sent to me. I mean, he does like his turpits as well, I know that, but, yeah. I'm not surprised. I mean, that's just pure speculation on my part, but I would put money down on that. Well, maybe not a lot of money, but you know, like 20 pence or something, because I just like to live dangerously like that. So yeah, there we go. For my first bit of tier 10 warships action, I think this was a pretty good game. And it shows that even though you've got all that torp range and you've got all that stealth, it's not all peaches and cream when you've got that top tier Japanese destroyer. So yeah, you still have to keep your head about you, and you do still need a bit of luck. And it helps if you've got nice teammates that lay down smokes so you can retreat as well. That kind of thing is very much appreciated when it happens. So hopefully you have enjoyed this, and if you have, you can leave any comments below, you can hit the like button, you can sub to my channel if you aren't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.